Welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast. I'm Ani Anderson.
And I'm Brian Trzaskos. Join us as we explore the science
and art of trauma-sensitive somatic practices and tools.
Strengthen your practice as a coach, therapist, or holistic professional.
Master the art of motivating even the most challenging clients when you understand how to tap into and unlock your client's complete holistic intelligence.
If you want to learn the most cutting-edge, research-supported skills for personal and professional mastery, you've come to the right place. Let's get this conversation started.
Hi, and welcome to the Somatic Coaching Academy podcast. Hey, Brian.
Hello, Ani.
How are you today?
Doing fantastic.
Awesome.
Loving being here. I love podcasting day. It's one of my favorite days of the week.
Yeah, me too. It's so much fun. And I'm looking forward to the next few episodes, actually, because we're going to be doing some Q&A and looking forward to answering some A's for people's Q's.
Yeah, so this is a new series we're doing.
Yeah.
We're doing a new series. This is the Top Questions series. So the next 4 episodes are the top 10 questions. Honestly, I don't know if there's actually 10 questions in each one.
Nobody's counting,
but
Brian.
they're just,
okay.
But they are the top questions.
Yeah.
The top questions that certain groups of people ask us about. So this week's top 10 questions group are the top 10 questions that established coaches and therapists have about somatic coaching.
Yeah. And if you're new to the Somatic Coaching Academy and you're new to Brian and I, we are the co-founders here. We have a therapeutic background. So Brian has his degree in physical therapy. I have my degree in occupational therapy. Both of us left the systems to create our own private pay holistic rehab practices. We also had all kinds of other certifications under our belts. And so we have a therapeutic background. So we were established rehab therapists. We also owned and operated wellness centers and had licensed social workers and things
mental
like
health
that.
Practitioners
On our team, as well as, of course, acupuncturists, massage therapists, and things like that. So we have plenty of background in the established therapeutic realm. We also have years of experience in the coaching space. So just giving us some street cred.
Yeah, that's kind of where we come from. So when people start talking about the somatic coaching work and the Somatic Coaching Academy, and they are coming from their own experience of either they're established coaches, so they're professional coaches, they're maybe doing executive coaching or maybe health and wellness coaching or maybe weight loss coaching or maybe whatever else kind of coaching, performance coaching. What else can you think of?
Life coaching, did you say that?
Life coaching, yeah. So professional coaches that are like, okay, so I'm established already. I already have my own coaching work that I'm doing. Somatic stuff is kind of trending right now. It's interesting. I'm curious about it. So I have some questions about it.
Yeah.
And then we also get questions from mental health professionals, social workers. I actually was traveling a couple weeks ago and I met a social worker who was working also in a restaurant. She was actually just finishing her degree, and she was the waitress that was serving dinner. And we had a really cool conversation around her work in social work, and she was really fascinated by the opportunity to think about, wow, somatic work. I never even thought that was a possibility that I can go deeper into.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people in social work that have a lot of questions for us around this.
Absolutely.
As well as psychotherapeutics.
Yeah. So we're going to do another episode that is especially for rehab therapists. And just to let you know, and you might be wondering why we're lumping in established coaches and established therapists. Like that seems like, why would we actually be having the same conversations? But in light of the groups of people who come and talk to us, the established coaches and established therapists actually have some pretty similar questions and some pretty similar needs. We have both established therapists and established coaches, as well as a number of other different kinds of people study at the academy and utilize all the services here, from the private coaching and the group coaching and the certification programs and all the stuff that we do here.
Yep. Yeah. Great. Great. So I have the questions written down here, so I'll be just referencing them. Are we ready to dive in?
Yeah.
All right. So, and I don't think these are written in any order of importance.
No.
They're just, we just captured them and lumped them together. So one question that people have, established coaches and therapists have is, how can somatic coaching help clients who seem stuck, quote unquote, stuck, despite years of talk therapy?
Can we actually start this question with some education about how, in light of what we teach at the Somatic Coaching Academy, we do teach people how to become somatic coaches and we teach somatic coaching skills. We also teach somatic practices,
Yeah.
right? And so sometimes the established therapist who wants to come and study some somatics, actually, what they're looking for is somatic practices. They don't want to go and become a coach. What we do find is that sometimes people do the somatic practices and then they recognize that there's so much more to learn and they're interested in continuing on.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to say that, for people listening and talking about, can it help people to get unstuck when they've been stuck in therapy? Sometimes the unstuckness comes from doing somatic practice work as an established therapist to help a person move through. And of course, the answer is yes and yes.
Yeah.
It can really help people when you do coaching as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that approach, Ani, where the unstucking is kind of working in the body itself to help the nervous system regulate. The other way I like to think about answering this question in terms of the delineation between a somatic approach, or what we call a bottom-up approach, and a talk therapy, which is the top-down approach.
Yeah.
So purely, and you see blending of these things going on over time too. Sometimes you'll still run into, like, there's a purely top-down person who will not address body stuff at all with a client, and they're specifically working on a cognitive level. And so I think part of this question is geared towards people who feel like they've done intellectual talk therapy for a long time. They're just not going anywhere with it.
Yeah.
But I think one of the basic reasons from the way we think about it is that your subconscious mind is 95% of your mind power, which is what you like to say a lot. And so it's really running the show, right? Consciously, we're only about 5%. So our subconscious mind tells our conscious mind how to think about things. So when we're doing purely talk therapy, I think about it like if you're trying to negotiate with the leader of a puppet government. Like, if you had a leader of a government and they're actually not in charge of the government, they're just a puppet to somebody else behind the scenes that are telling them what to do. So if you're negotiating with the leader of the puppet government, they really don't have any power to negotiate or make decisions. And what their primary job is to protect the person that is pulling their strings.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I think about the subconscious and the conscious mind. The conscious mind is just a kind of a puppet leader to our subconscious lots of times. And that might seem offensive to some people, like, oh, I'm really conscious. I know. But the thing is, we're not wired that way. Physiologically, you will never become more than 5% conscious because our brains literally cannot consciously handle the amount of information that is required to get through a day. So our subconscious mind has to do that. So our subconscious mind is always picking and choosing the information that it's feeding the conscious mind in order to protect itself. So when we're doing talk therapy, what you're really doing is you're talking to a puppet leader, where somatic coaching actually gets behind the curtain and talks directly to the person that's pulling the strings underneath the conscious mind. And that's why we can help breakthroughs and help people move through the deeper patterns that they're experiencing that are problematic for them.
Yeah. One of the ways I like to think about what you're talking about is how the conscious mind, that 5%, is really about watching and witnessing what's going on. And in talk therapy, it can be tough sometimes when we start to get into things to really witness our experience. So when a person is practiced in their body, in their physiology, in their nervous system regulation, in their window of tolerance, and being able to modulate and regulate their nervous system, they actually have a greater capacity to maintain witnessing, to maintain awareness. And so then they can use the conscious mind even better. I can't help but say with this question too, Just real quick, here at the Somatic Coaching Academy, we have a new paradigm way of thinking about the body, mind, spirit, and healing and growth, and how a lot of times in the therapeutic realm, we don't completely encapsulate the tenets of coaching actually, which help people to look ahead at what they want to achieve. And when we embrace the full spectrum of the human being by helping somebody quote unquote heal by looking ahead at what they want to achieve, we can unlock things that have been locked in the therapeutic paradigm that when we look at the coaching paradigm, kind of quickly unlock it because we are embracing a holistic way of looking at how people grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure we talk about that in other podcasts. So
Love it.
we just
Okay.
threw out a whole bunch of different stuff there.
Question number 2.
Yeah.
We're going to be here a long time.
Yeah,
Okay. So question number 2, how can I learn to address trauma safely and without risking re-traumatization?
why don't you do that one?
All right. So again, big question, lots of information there. Without this isn't a podcast really isn't the place to teach specifically trauma informed and trauma sensitive information, right? That has to happen in a way where we're getting live feedback with each other. It's a learning environment, right? This is really more of a kind of an informational environment that's going to help people understand a little bit and take some tools away and then start to work with stuff a little bit. So to learn how to help people safely navigate change, there's kind of a structure with which that happens. And like trauma aware is kind of the first level of that. Help just becoming aware of the widespread impact of trauma, like how many people actually experience trauma. That's usually pretty eye-opening for people when you look at the statistics. The next layer is understanding the trauma-informed framework. That when you're integrating the 5 steps, now some people say there's 6, some people say there's 7, they're similar, there's overlap. I think they're all great. Everyone has their own reasons for doing it. A lot of good information there, but there's a framework. Let's just say that. So when you follow a framework that is a trauma-informed framework and you adhere to that framework in your practice and with your clients on a regular basis, that really reduces the possibility for traumatization. The next deeper level is trauma sensitive work. When you're a trauma sensitive professional and you're working directly with someone's nervous system, you can help them stabilize their nervous system. And that helps to reduce the possibility of creating a re-traumatization when you're working with people. And then the even deeper layer is trauma specific work. So this is really, again, the world of psychotherapeutics where you're working with people specifically who have experienced trauma, not just potentially someone who has trauma post-traumatic symptoms, but someone who has actually a post-traumatic disorder that's been diagnosed that way in that trauma-specific realm. So when you understand those layers and you understand where you fit in those layers and you understand what tools fit in each one of those layers, that's really an amazing way to create stabilization and safety for your clients as you take them through a coaching process or a therapeutic process to reduce your traumatization. So the answer basically is become trauma aware, trauma sensitive, in between, sorry, trauma aware, trauma informed, trauma sensitive, and if your work defines it, trauma specific.
Which actually goes back to that first question about how somatic coaching can help clients become stuck when talk therapy hasn't worked, because not everybody's trauma sensitive, by the way. So those trauma, all those trauma levels that you were talking about help to unlock that stuckness that people have experienced in the past.
Yeah. And we do have a past podcast on the 4 levels of trauma practice. So you might want to check that out. It goes deeper into those 4 levels. All right, next question. Will somatic coaching help my clients move past emotional blocks faster than traditional methods?
Yes. And I'm going to actually scratch out somatic coaching and put in sensation-based motivation coaching, which is our methodology that we teach here at the Somatic Coaching Academy in our level 3 certification program. The sensation-based model, what it does actually is it understands that an emotion is 2 things. An emotion is the felt quality sensations we feel in our body and the narratives that we have, or the thoughts, the stories about those felt quality sensations. And an emotion is all of that stuff that I just mentioned, those 2 things all mixed up together. And so when you take a sensation-based approach, you can actually work with somebody and work at the sensation level without getting all mixed up in the narrative, the stories. and the meaning behind it and get right in there and do something really powerful really quick, because you're kind of going in the back door with the nervous system and working with the sensation base. And so in that way, we are actually working with emotional blocks. We also are working with them with a specific aspect of the emotional block that doesn't get all wrapped up in the stories, which is the yarn that people get really wrapped up in when they're trying to, get through emotional blocks. If you're just trying to unwrap your yarn, it's going to take all day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting with these questions too. I'm a pretty high fact finder. And so when I even get questions like, well, what do we mean by somatic coaching? Because there's a lot of different things that can fall into that bucket. So I'm really glad you defined what we're talking about as sensation-based motivation coaching, because that's a specific kind of somatic coaching.
Yes.
Right. And then what do you mean by traditional coaching? So for me, I always want to kind of get more clarification. So in some ways, we're making assumptions here when we look at these questions. So if we're assuming that traditional coaching means intellectual or cognitively based coaching, if we're making that assumption, kind of relates back to the first question we had. And again, the answer for me is yes. Are you going to be able to make more profound changes? Absolutely. Because isn't it interesting, if we're thinking about helping someone overcome emotional challenges, that we think we could actually make an impact on that, or a profound impact on that, by working cognitively.
I know. What's funny?
Right. So wouldn't we make more of a difference of working with the emotions themselves?
But aren't emotions made in the brain, Brian? I mean,
Yeah.
that's right.
Right.
I don't even know that anybody stopped to think about it, to be perfect.
Yeah. So of
We
course
in
we're
our
going to help.
bodies.
Of course we're going to move past emotional blocks faster when we're working with the emotions rather than just the cognition.
Well, and with the body, because we feel emotions in the body.
Yep.
And just like you were saying, when we tackle this question about, will somatic coaching help me move past emotional blocks faster? There's a lot of different ways to work with the soma. There's a lot of different somatic practices. There's a lot of different somatic coaching techniques. We can only speak to the methodologies that we teach and use here at the Academy, and they're freaking awesome for helping people to move through emotional blocks.
Yeah.
Really remarkable. And that's because of the sensation-based approach that we use.
Yep, exactly. Okay, great. Good answers. I hope they're good answers anyway. I thought they were good answers. Well done.
Great job.
Okay, so next question. How can I maintain credibility with my clients and peers when introducing new body-centered techniques?
Well, why wouldn't people have credibility?
Well, I think, bringing new stuff in, do you think that it can be, people can feel uncertain about it, right? Because it's new, it's different. People might not be aware of it. Create uncertainty for us, create uncertainty for them.
As soon as we start talking about body stuff out there, we start to get questions about, well, are people going to think we're weird, or won't people think you're woo woo, or there's some serious concern. And as I teach nationally in coaches associations, 100% of the time we get this question all the time about credibility and somatic coaching. So
so the first thing, the way I think about it is, it's all in the presentation for people. How do we maintain credibility? Well, the first thing we do is never try to convince anybody of anything.
For sure.
Right? Because the more we try to convince someone, people feel that and resist it, because that doesn't feel good to try to be convinced of something. And oftentimes when we come from a place of trying to convince, actually we're trying to convince ourselves.
100%.
We're not really trying to convince the person we're working with, trying to convince ourselves, and we're using all these rational arguments to try to convince somebody to do it. Right. So the way I think about one of the best ways to enhance credibility is to be curious, is to ask questions of what your client or your peer in this case wants to achieve. Like, what do they really want to get out of moving forward? And then help them kind of ask questions rather around, well, where are you coming up short with that right now? Where are the gaps? What is what you're doing right now not getting you to where you want to go? And when you identify the gaps, then you can start to talk a little bit about how somatic coaching can actually fill in those gaps. That's a great way to begin helping to enhance your own credibility, simply because you're coming from a place of curiosity and authentic kind of information sharing rather than convincing.
Absolutely. These are the techniques that we teach our students when they want to gain more clients, work with businesses, and talk about what they do. And we always talk about asking people what they want to achieve and looking in that direction.
Mhm.
I also want to bring us back to what you said about credibility and how you feel about yourself. 100% of the time, we have seen that when people are concerned about how they're going to be perceived, they are already perceiving themselves like that in some capacity. And so, doing your own work and using the skills that we teach here at the Academy on and with yourself will help you to rewire, decondition yourself to become a person who can professionally stand there in your full, awesome, confident credibility and really be present with the other people. Because really, what people want is to be seen and heard. And we can do that best when we feel confident and credible with ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just to put a final stamp on that, the point is, folks, when you believe in yourself, other people will believe in you.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward. So,
And it's really easy to believe in the techniques that you see work so well with yourself. And it's super inspiring to go. And once you do them here with us and you see how well they work with you and your peers, you just cannot wait to go out and do them with other people because they work so well. And it actually takes the pressure off. What do I look like? Because you're just so excited about the techniques and the
yes.
methods because they're so awesome. Because that's really, what it's about is helping people create change.
Yeah, we love it. We love it. Love it. Okay. So next question. This is I love this one. So good.
Is it about
What
science, research? I
scientific
knew it.
what scientific evidence supports the effectiveness of somatic techniques in coaching?
It's all you, baby.
Yeah, well, again, we have to look at what words we're using. So what scientific evidence supports the effectiveness? Well, what are we trying to affect is kind of like something I want to bring up. Well, what do you mean by effectiveness? And so for me, it's such a broad question. I have to understand, what are we actually talking about here?
Sure.
Are we talking about effectiveness in getting a horse to run out of a stable when you want them to? Or are we talking about the effectiveness of helping someone live a more purposeful life? We're talking about the effectiveness of less anxiety. I mean, I have to be clear. When we talk about scientific research, in other words, there's no science that is going to look at all of the effectiveness
Of
of
everything.
everything with somatic. It's not possible. Science looks at very specific, research looks at very specific things. And so I can speak to that for sure. Now, the other part of that question is somatic techniques. What techniques are we talking about?
Yeah, good point.
And there's so many different techniques.
Yeah.
So I can just kind of touch on a couple of research points that for specific issues. Now, I will say, like in the Somatic Coaching Academy library, there's lots of information in there about a variety of different issues that people deal with that
Yeah.
you can kind of look into deeper. So I just want to first of all say, very broad question. So let's dig down a little bit deeper into it. Okay. Now, if we're looking at things like chronic pain, if we're looking at things like anxiety, if we're looking at things like depression that we can specifically look at, yeah, there's plenty of evidence to show that somatic practices for sure help to reduce anxiety, help to reduce depression, help to reduce chronic pain. Like if we're looking at those three issues, and also as far as like nervous, emotional regulation too, like there's plenty of research to show that those issues are helped dramatically by somatic practices. Going deeper into somatic coaching work as well, chronic pain for sure. There's a lot of research around all types of coaching practices and body-mind therapeutic practices that are important for chronic pain, as well as, again, depression and anxiety. So if we're looking at those three things specifically in the research, there's good evidence that somatic techniques, in quotes, depending on what the techniques are very helpful.
There's some new research even on what emotions are and how emotions are created that's substantiating these techniques, and even newer research that's really substantiating the sensation-based model too. You have a lot of research that's available to certification students to check out and look at.
Yeah, we have a whole hidden library just for the certification students to be able to use to bring back into their work, into their potential colleagues and clients and those sorts of things.
Some people use it a lot. Some people don't use it at all, but it's there. I also encourage you to check out case studies, which are also in the library and you can find on our website, because I know that's more anecdotal, but it's also really profoundly interesting, and you'll get so much information from checking out the case studies that we have available.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I was laughing as you were reading the question because I was remembering this conversation we had with a client of ours. It must have been about 2 weeks ago now, but they were sitting on a panel talking with a group of doctors about changing the food system. And our client was talking about how stress impacts health, and the doctors were telling our client that there was really there's no research that
Yeah.
there's no research that substantiates that. And the client came back to us and said, like, first of all, really, is that really true? And second of all, like, maybe you might have a few articles or something. And we were like,
I
and talking about
immediately
this. So
went
we're
on to
like,
PubMed and just plugged in stress, chronic disease, and about 2,400 articles came up.
2,400, a few.
So peer-reviewed articles. So
Yeah.
there's plenty of research to connect stress
Totally.
and chronic disease.
So to your point,
Yeah, incredible.
like, what are you researching and what are you really looking at? Because if you try to nut it down to something like, is this certain somatic coaching, blah, 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 you got to be careful about what you're looking for. But there's tons of research to substantiate that, like you said, somatic practices impact stress and anxiety. And that alone will just do worlds of amazing good.
Yep. Yeah. Incredible. Incredible. Okay. So next one. Can somatic coaching methods help in managing clients with severe trauma or PTSD?
So here at the Academy in our level 3 program, when people are becoming certified as sensation-based motivation coaches, those practices that they do, by the time they develop their competencies, they could be working with trauma specific populations. Most of our students don't. Most of our students have the trauma sensitive skills to work with anybody. And they're not necessarily going into trauma specific places, but this question is asking about that.
Correct. Yeah. Well, I think the short answer is yes, absolutely. Because to make an impact in people experiencing severe trauma symptoms and PTSD, you actually don't have to go back through all of the narrative and the memories of what happened to start the trauma. To make an impact, you don't have to do that. I'm not saying you don't have to do that at all during the process in order to help people come to resolution. Some people need that. But to make what research has shown, to make a profound impact in people who experience trauma, AKA nervous system dysregulation, because that in the moment, like right now in the moment, when someone's experiencing a reactivation of their trauma, because the trauma has happened in the past, the event is over. The actual event is over, but in the moment, the body is re-experiencing itself as if the event is occurring now
Through nervous system
through the nervous system
dysregulation.
dysregulation. So what the research shows is that when we can help someone regulate their nervous system, the symptoms associated with the memory of the old trauma change. They actually reduce. And then someone's able to process the historical narrative more effectively because they're not overwhelmed by their nervous system. So can somatic coaching methods help manage that? Absolutely, and we can do it without going into any of the narrative. We can do it by just working specifically with the body itself to help regulate the nervous system, and it can have a profound impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So another great question. How much time do I need to invest in somatic coaching certification given my busy schedule?
Okay, let me take this one
I'm
here
giving it
because
to you. All you.
we have some students who want to come on board and basically get their coaching certifications done as quickly as possible, and they can be a little antsy about, wanting to get it done. And listen, we get it. The world needs our help. I want these skills so badly, and the sooner I can get them, the better I can get out there and go help people. Understand? And one of the things we like to say is it takes about 9 months to make a human being. It's going to take about 9 months for you to become a human being who is going to deliver exceptional somatic coaching skills. So it takes a little time. And by the way, it's really good to slow down, just hang on a hot minute, slow down and soak it in and really take time to integrate and take time to rewire your own system and your own body. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of years of human conditioning that has gotten us to this point in being the humans that we are on this planet in this time. It might take a few months for your system to get to the place where you're a person who can hold this profound level of transformation for people and help them to get in touch with the very thing that feels so threatening and ugly and wrong and bad and all of the stuff that comes up and violent and all the stuff that comes up because we're talking about people's bodies. It's vulnerable, it's sensitive, it's gonna take time.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we would give a friend or a family member or a child time to tell us their story and to tell us how they're feeling and to unwrap. We're not going to say, would you get it done faster? Because I've got to go in 5 minutes. Like we're going to give the people we love time and encourage our students to give themselves that love and time, because guarantee you at the end of your trajectory of learning, oh my gosh, your competencies are going to be so rich and you're going to take that for the rest of your life and profoundly impact the people who you work with.
Yeah. So I will actually continue to dig into that a little bit deeper, Ani, and say that in our program that's broken up into 3 parts, level 1, 2, and 3. So the first time investment is about 30 days with a course centering with the somatic practice essentials program, right?
Yeah.
So, and then you could take that information and then start making a difference.
Absolutely. And some people stop there and they take that program and they do amazing things with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can start making a difference. And now the level 2 program, the somatic transformation fundamentals program, is 3 months long. So that gets you a little deeper into making transformations in the soma, in their experience. And then the level 3 program is 8 months long, right? So when we say it takes 9 months to make a human, yeah, absolutely does. And that happens when you get all the way through those level 3 programs. So, but at the same time, as you're working in levels 1 and then coming out of level 1, you can start making a difference. And then level 2, you can start making a deeper difference. Level 3, you can really start to create transformations for people on very deep levels.
Right. Through each level, you're going to be able to create bigger and more sustainable transformations with people because of the knowledge that you have and the experience that you've gone through during your training.
Yeah. And the way we have the program kind of sorted out is to help support our students to get out there and start using the tools right away.
Yeah.
So that they can start getting some feedback on how they're working while they're still in a support bubble with us. They can keep working with it.
Yeah. Even that 8-month program is laid out so that as you start right away to use the tools and integrate the work.
Yeah, exactly. So so the overall investment is probably really a year by the time you're done with it, but it's put into chunks where you're not waiting to the end of a year to start using the skills. You're using them all throughout the period of time. So it's kind of a blending that way. Okay, next question. How can I confidently explain somatic techniques to clients who may be skeptical of body-centered practices?
We kind of already talked about this.
We did a little bit, yeah.
We like talking about what people want to achieve and things like that. Did you have something else?
Yeah, I think the little modifier I would have for additionally answering this question is, again, it's the easiest way is to ask someone about what they're struggling with. Like identify something in the current moment that they're struggling with. So let's say someone's skeptical of body-mind techniques. And I say, okay, so can I ask you, what are you struggling with right now? And they're like, I'm really feeling anxious. Then use a very simple body-centered technique to help them reduce their anxiety. So in the moment, they actually feel better after you do it. And you say, well, there you go. Do you feel better? Oh my God, yeah, I definitely feel better. And sometimes we do a little rating scale with people before and after those practices so that they can see that they actually feel better. And then they, wow, that was really easy. That was simple. I feel better. And you say, well, there you go. That was a body-centered technique. So giving someone an experience of the technique usually helps to reduce someone's skepticism around it, because now they have an experience of it that they can make sense of. And they also realize that it helped.
Yeah, absolutely. We can remember that people feel threatened for some reason by new things, kind of like you were saying before. And the people who seem skeptical actually can become our most brilliant, awesome clients who then become like raving advocates of the work for life. So sometimes people want to turn away too quickly from somebody who's skeptical and say they don't get it or they're not my people or something like that. But we encourage you just lean in just a little bit, because those people who have some resistance to the change actually can create some just really awesome change
Mm.
and be wonderful clients to work with.
Yeah, I have another little tip too that just occurred to me as we're talking here is it depends a little about your audience too. So I've taught and traveled, all over the country to, I don't know, tens of thousands of people. And basically, when you're teaching or speaking, you're either teaching to a group of professionals or you're speaking or teaching to a group of lay people. So when you speak to professionals, you're speaking to them because they want to learn how to help other people. And when you're working with lay people, typically you're speaking to them because they actually are the ones that want the help for themselves. Now, I'm not saying there's not a blending sometimes of those audiences,
For
but
sure.
there's basically when you're invited to speak to a group, the group is usually defined out that way. Now, so when I'm speaking to those audiences that may oftentimes be skeptical, what I have to realize is that the professional group, they respond better if I speak and lead with a lot of the research and the science and then give them an experience.
Mm-hmm.
Where the lay group,
That's a really good
you
point.
have to lead with the experience and then follow up with the science.
Yeah,
And when you find that little
that's good.
magic trick right there,
Yeah.
then that really reduces skepticism for
Uh-huh.
people. But you have to kind of know who you're talking to.
Yeah, that's good. Meet people where they're at.
Meet people where they are.
I like that.
Okay. What kind of support or community will I have during and after the certification?
You're going to have such great support and community. I mean, that's something that it, our students reflect back all the time that the Somatic Coaching Academy is really known for. It's a strong community. I think it's when you get into your first class that, you start to get a feel for it. And then very quickly you realize this cohort is meant to be. These are people who I really want to know more people like this. And here I am put in this environment with other people who think like me and are interested like me. And then we have our classes, we have our virtual community, which has a robust conversation, I'm sure, happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Every day of the week, people are in there communing. Um, and our students, I mean, some of them go in there and they kind of dip in for professional knowledge and information about the techniques and business building and things. And there are certain people who have found friends for life. They're scheduling, vacations with each other right now. I know, for sure, and talking to each other on the phone. So whatever range of support that people are looking for is available to them. Nobody's making you go on vacation. You know what I mean? But there's whatever it is that would be supportive to you is available within the context, not just of your cohorts, but of the ever expanding community at the SCA.
Yeah. And so within the community, we have monthly office hours, which anybody in the community can come to that, right? And
Anybody who's a graduate of the certification program.
any of the certification programs. It can be the level 1, level 2, level 3.
Yep.
We do monthly office hours, and at this office hours, what do we tackle in office hours, Ani?
We do a lot of business building kinds of things, but also we do some personal reflection. We do some work with the tools. It kind of depends on what people are needing in the community. I got to tell you though, Brian, you're asking me like what we do, but every single time at the end of office hours, we ask everybody for a takeaway, and 80% of the takeaways every time are how grateful people are to have the time dedicated on their calendar to spend time with the community.
Mm-hmm.
So I could tell you about different topics that we do, most of them around business building. We talk about the techniques and stuff like that. But really, the take home for all of our students every single time is that being in the community with their peers resets them, gets their mindset in alignment, reminds them of who they are, and that they're surrounded by people who are like them and think like them.
Yeah.
And off we go.
Yeah. So and that's a monthly meeting for people that are currently on program and
Yes.
any graduates at all,
Yeah.
no matter how long ago you graduated, you're always come back and welcome to those monthly office meeting.
Yeah.
Office hours.
Office hours. And then while you're on program, obviously you have all kinds of support within the context of your programs. We also offer the students who are on program with level 2 and level 3 open coaching, which is opportunity to get coached with our team.
Yep.
Our students love that. So that support's available for you too. If you so desire and need even more personal support on top of that, we have ways to work privately with coaches so that you can get the private support that you want and need. There's so many tailored in support mechanisms. So there's the virtual support, there's the opportunity for private support, there's the cohort support, there's the getting coach support, even the support in terms of how we organize your homework and the peer shares, and how we have taken a lot of intention about how we create communication standards and things like that. Sets you up for success as a student graduate that you don't even like understand how it all flows so well, but you're going to feel like we really have you, because we do. And because that's a value of ours here. So every time we do anything here, we think about how can we really infuse the value of we got you into what we're doing.
Yep. Yeah. So lots of support. Okay. Last question. Here we go. How can somatic coaching help me address my own stress and burnout as a therapist?
Well, it's really important to use somatic practices and somatic coaching techniques when you're experiencing any kind of burnout, because it's a thing that's happening in our nervous system and in our body. And so the somatic practices are critical to being able to address burnout. It's one of the things that our private clients are seeking out, either actively or that they don't want to get there. But that somatic component is critical.
Critical for it. I see it in two levels. So the somatic practices are critical as a buffer for burnout sort of thing. It's like putting on your fire gear every day, if you will, right? It helps us become more resilient just to the forces around us on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Somatic practices do. And then the deeper sensation-based motivation coaching work, the deeper somatic coaching work, when it helps you reframe our belief systems, that actually makes us almost burnout proof. Because now we're not approaching the world in the same way. In a lot of ways, burnout is really the outcome of resisting life.
Yeah.
And when we stop resisting life, we don't burn out. And the reason we resist life is because our belief systems don't match the changing environment around us. So when we don't adapt, we burn out. And why wouldn't we adapt? Because our belief systems are sclerotic and structured into a certain reality that we're not allowing change to meet what's going on around us. So on two levels, you can kind of create a burnout shield with the somatic practices, but with a deeper core work, you can actually become burnout proof.
Which I think is really important in the times we live in now, because we live in highly changeable times.
Highly changeable and pressure-filled times.
Yeah. And we need to remember that, no matter how big our technology gets or whatever, it's like, really, we're still human. It's still our nervous systems that we're dealing with. And so those somatic tools, practices, the somatic coaching are really what help us to get to the human nervous system, which is so important.
Yeah. So if you're an established coach or therapist, keep doing the amazing work that you're doing in the world. It's so important. It's so needed now. Hope that this podcast answered your top questions. And if you have more questions, obviously reach out to us at info@somaticcoachingacademy.com through the website. Give us a call. The phone number's on there. Whatever it is that you need so we can help continue to support you and the amazing work that you do. And we hope that you choose to go deeper into learning more about somatic work.
We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope that this conversation will help you improve your practice and change the way you think about your work, your clients, and yourself.
Continue your exploration of trauma-sensitive somatic coaching by listening to more podcast episodes at somaticcoachingacademy.com. You could be the trusted guide that people turn to help them with their most challenging situations and to reach their most precious goals. Thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next time.